A group of arrogant thugs storms into a tranquil horse sanctuary, their laughter echoing across the peaceful fields as they spot a majestic Mustang grazing alone. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In a moment of senseless cruelty that sends shockwaves through the quiet ranch, they viciously kick the noble creature for their twisted entertainment, but their smirks quickly fade when they realize the ranch's owner, a decorated combat veteran, has witnessed their every move. What unfolds next will teach them that some actions have consequences that run deeper than they could ever imagine. Prepare for a tale of honor, justice, and the power of redemption. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Valor Ridge Ranch, a haven of peace nestled in the rolling hills of Montana. The sprawling property, with its weathered wooden fences and rustic charm, represented more than just a horse sanctuary. It was a place of healing, both for the rescued Mustangs and for those who found solace in their presence. Among the scattered oak trees and swaying prairie grass, horses of various colors moved with graceful freedom, their spirits as wild as the land itself. At the heart of this sanctuary stood Thunder, a striking black Mustang with a silver-streaked mane that seemed to capture the very essence of untamed beauty. His powerful frame and proud bearing told a story of survival, matching that of his owner James "Hawk" Harrison, a former Navy SEAL who had found his own path to peace among these majestic creatures. Thunder was more than just Hawk's first rescue. He was a kindred spirit, another warrior who had overcome adversity to find strength in gentleness. Hawk stood at his usual spot by the northern fence, his trained eyes scanning the horizon out of habit, a remnant of his military days. His calloused hands rested on the sun-bleached wood as he watched Thunder lead a small herd through the pasture. The bond between them had been forged through patience and understanding, two souls who had seen the darker side of life, yet chosen to embrace the light. The peaceful scene was shattered by the sound of approaching vehicles, their engines growling. Like predators entering sacred ground, Hawk's posture stiffened, his combat-honed instincts immediately alert. 3 dusty pickup trucks appeared on the winding dirt road, driving far too fast for the terrain, their occupants whooping and hollering, carrying across the wind like warning shots. The trucks skidded to a halt near the main gate, kicking up, clouds of dust that seemed to dirty the very air of Valor Ridge. 6 young men piled out, their designer clothes and flashy jewelry creating a stark contrast to the ranch's humble surroundings. Their leader, a tall figure with a shock of dyed platinum hair and a swagger that reeked of unearned confidence, leaned against his truck's hood, surveying the ranch like a king examining his new territory. Thunder, ever curious and unafraid, approached the fence where the men gathered. His muscular frame moved with the fluid grace that had earned him his name, dark eyes alert but unworried. The other horses maintained their distance, somehow sensing what their leader could not. These visitors brought a darkness with them that had no place in their sanctuary. Hawk remained motionless, watching from his position as the group's leader, later identified as Kane, strutted closer to the fence. His friends followed, their phones out, recording everything with mocking laughter. Kane reached out toward Thunder, not with the respect such a magnificent creature deserved, but with the casual disregard of someone who had never learned the value of life beyond his own shallow existence. Thunder, trusting in the inherent good that Hawk had worked so hard to restore in him, stepped closer. The moment hung in the air like a pending storm, and before Hawk could shout a warning, Kane and 2 of his friends surged forward. Their boots connected with Thunder's side in a coordinated act of cruelty that echoed across the pasture like a gunshot. The proud Mustang reeled backward, confusion and pain replacing the trust in his eyes as the other horses scattered in panic. The thugs' laughter rang out, a hollow sound that carried their pride in their pointless act of violence. They high-fived each other, phones still recording, completely oblivious to the fact that Hawk had witnessed everything. As they turned back toward their trucks, still congratulating themselves on their moment of barbarism, they remained unaware that they had just crossed a line with someone who had spent his life defending others from exactly this kind of senseless cruelty. Hawk's expression hardened, his jaw set in a grim line as he watched the group pile back into their vehicles. His mind was already racing with possibilities, not of revenge, but of justice. These young men had just made a grave mistake, and soon they would learn that some lessons come at a price far higher than they could have anticipated. What they had done to Thunder wouldn't go unanswered, but Hawk's response would teach them something far more valuable than fear. It would teach them respect. Inside the weathered barn that served as the heart of Valor Ridge Ranch, the air hung, heavy with the scent of hay and leather, mingled with the lingering tension from the incident. Hawk moved with measured steps across the worn wooden floorboards, his military training evident in his controlled movements, despite the anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. The late afternoon light filtered through the slats in the barn's walls, creating strips of golden illumination that crossed his path like battle lines. The barn itself told a story of healing and purpose. Along its walls hung photographs of rescued Mustangs, each image capturing a moment of transformation. Some showed horses when they first arrived, scared, injured, or abandoned, while others displayed the same animals after months of patient rehabilitation. Among them, Thunder's journey held a special place, his photos reflecting a parallel to Hawk's own path from warrior to healer. Reaching for his phone, Hawk dialed a number he knew by heart. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Sarah, I need you at the ranch." Sarah Martinez, his head trainer and fellow veteran, had served as a combat medic in Afghanistan. She understood both the healing power of these horses and the importance of protecting them. Within minutes, the sound of her truck's engine announced her arrival. Sarah stepped into the barn, her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, her eyes immediately reading the tension in Hawk's posture. "What happened?" she asked, her voice carrying the same steady calm she'd maintained in combat zones. As Hawk recounted the incident, her expression hardened, years of military discipline barely containing her outrage. "6 of them?" she confirmed, her hand unconsciously moving to the medicine pouch she kept at her belt, a habit from her medic days. "And they recorded it?" A plan was already forming in her mind. In the age of social media, people's need to document their cruelty often became their undoing. Thunder's soft nickering drew their attention to the barn entrance, where the magnificent Mustang stood, his proud bearing somewhat diminished by the recent attack. Sarah approached him with practiced ease, her trained eyes assessing his condition. The physical damage seemed minimal, but both veterans recognized the deeper wound, the betrayal of trust that they had worked so hard to instill. "The bruising isn't severe," Sarah reported, her gentle hands examining Thunder's side. "But this kind of trauma can set back months of rehabilitation work." She looked up at Hawk, her expression grave. "These kids don't understand what they're messing with. This isn't just about Thunder, it's about everything Valor Ridge stands for." Hawk nodded, moving to stand beside Thunder, his hand resting on the horse's powerful neck. The ranch had become more than just a sanctuary for rescued Mustangs. It was a place where veterans could find peace, where the combination of nature and nurture helped heal the invisible wounds of war. These thugs hadn't just attacked a horse, they'd violated a sacred space. Sarah pulled out her tablet, her fingers moving swiftly across the screen. "Those trucks they were driving, I got the license plates, and if they posted that video anywhere..." She paused, her search yielding results faster than expected. "Found it. These idiots are already bragging about it online. Kane Thompson and his crew, they're local, rich kids who think money makes them untouchable." The setting sun cast long shadows through the barn doors as Hawk and Sarah continued their discussion, their military training naturally shifting into strategic planning. They weren't seeking revenge. That wasn't the way of Valor Ridge. Instead, they would pursue something more meaningful: understanding and accountability. "We need to handle this carefully," Hawk said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "These young men need to learn, not just suffer consequences." Sarah nodded in agreement, remembering how the ranch had helped her own healing process. After returning from deployment, sometimes the biggest transformations came from the most unexpected circumstances. As they talked, other horses approached the barn, drawn by Thunder's presence. Each had their own story of rescue and rehabilitation, their own journey from fear to trust. The sight strengthened Hawk's resolve. What happened next would not just be about punishing 6 reckless young men, it would be about teaching them the value of respect, responsibility, and redemption. "I have an idea," Sarah said finally, her expression softening as she watched Thunder interact with the other horses. "But we'll need help from the community. These boys think they're untouchable because they've never had to face real consequences." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Maybe it's time they learned what it means to be truly accountable for their actions. As darkness settled over Valor Ridge Ranch, Hawk and Sarah's plan began to take shape. They would show these young men that true strength wasn't found in acts of cruelty, but in the courage to face one's mistakes and grow from them. The next few days would test not just their patience, but their ability to transform anger into opportunity, a skill both veterans had learned the hard way. The morning sun had barely risen over Valor Ridge Ranch when Sarah's network of contacts began yielding results. Her years as a combat medic had taught her the value of intelligence gathering, and she'd spent the night reaching out to various community members who shared her concern for the ranch's mission. The video of Thunder's attack had spread rapidly through local social media, generating exactly the kind of attention Kane and his friends had wanted, but not in the way they'd expected. Hawk sat at his desk in the ranch office, a converted corner of the main barn that still smelled of leather and hay. Before him lay his laptop, displaying multiple tabs of information about Kane Thompson and his crew. The leader's father, turned out, was Martin Thompson, a prominent real estate developer known for his charitable contributions to veteran causes, a detail that added an ironic twist to the situation. "You need to see this," Sarah said, entering the office with her tablet in hand. She placed it in front of Hawk, showing him the latest social media updates. The video of Thunder's attack had backfired spectacularly. Local community members, particularly those connected to veteran organizations and animal welfare groups, had begun identifying the perpetrators. Comments flooded in, condemning their actions and calling for accountability. "Their phones are probably blowing up right about now," Sarah noted, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "But that's just the beginning." She pulled up another screen, showing emails from several unexpected allies. The local news had picked up the story, and veterans groups from across the state were offering their support. Even more surprising, several of Martin Thompson's business associates had reached out, distancing themselves from Kane's actions. Thunder's soft nickering drew their attention to the barn door. The Mustang stood there, his proud bearing slowly returning despite yesterday's ordeal. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the local veterinarian and daughter of a Vietnam veteran, was examining him with gentle hands. "The physical damage is minimal," she reported, straightening up. "But you're right about the psychological impact. These horses trust us. Breaking that trust can undo months of progress." Hawk nodded, his jaw set in determination. "We've got their names now," he said, turning back to his laptop. Kane Thompson, Marcus Reed, Jason Chen, Tyler Brooks, Chris Walker and Devon Mills, all from wealthy families, all with social media full of similar stunts, though nothing this cruel before. Sarah's phone buzzed with a new message. "That was Chief Matthews from the police department," she said, reading the text. "He served with both of us. Says the boys' parents are already calling, trying to smooth things over. They're offering to pay for any damages." "This isn't about money," Hawk replied, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "It's about understanding the consequences of their actions. These young men think life is a game because they've never had to face real responsibility." Through the office window, they could see more horses gathering in the morning light. Each one had a story of trauma and recovery. Each one represented a victory of patience over pain. The sight strengthened their resolve to handle this situation in a way that would create lasting change. "I've been thinking," Sarah said, pulling up a chair. "We know Martin Thompson funds veteran programs to boost his public image. What if we use that?" She outlined her plan, drawing on her experience with rehabilitation programs for both veterans and horses. "These boys want attention. Let's give them attention they never expected." As they discussed the details, Dr. Rodriguez joined them, adding her own insights. "The parallel between traumatized horses and traumatized humans is powerful," she noted. "Sometimes the best way to learn empathy is to see yourself in another's pain." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching vehicles, not the aggressive roar of yesterday's trucks, but the measured arrival of supporters. Members of the local Veterans Association, led by retired Master Sergeant James Chen, had come to offer their assistance. Among them was Lisa Walker, a respected journalist and military spouse who specialized in stories about veteran rehabilitation programs. "The community's behind you," Master Sergeant Chen assured them, his presence carrying the quiet authority of someone who had led men in combat. These boys thought they were showing off their power. Now they're going to learn what real strength looks like. As the morning progressed, Hawk and Sarah's plan evolved into something more comprehensive than simple punishment. They would create an opportunity for transformation, not just for Kane and his friends, but for the entire community's understanding of what places like Valor Ridge represented. "We're not just protecting horses here," Hawk said, watching Thunder lead his herd across the morning pasture. "We're preserving a space where broken spirits, human and animal, can heal. Those boys didn't just attack a horse, they attacked everything this place stands for." Sarah nodded, her medic's instincts shifting from treating physical wounds to healing deeper scars. "Then let's show them exactly what that means," she replied, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who had witnessed both the worst and best of human nature. The next phase of their response would demonstrate that true justice wasn't about revenge, it was about restoration. The afternoon sun beat down on the luxury shopping district of downtown, where Kane Thompson and his friends had gathered at their usual hangout, an upscale coffee shop that catered to the city's elite. Their usual bravado had dimmed considerably as they huddled around a table, phones buzzing incessantly with notifications they were now afraid to check. The video that was supposed to boost their social media presence had instead unleashed a storm they hadn't anticipated. Kane slouched in his chair, his platinum hair no longer styled with its usual precision, dark circles under his eyes betraying a sleepless night. Beside him, Marcus Reed scrolled through his phone, his face growing paler with each swipe. "My dad's law firm is getting slammed with calls," he muttered. "They're threatening to pull their veteran outreach program sponsorship if this doesn't get handled." Jason Chen, whose family owned several successful tech startups, looked equally disturbed. "My sister's a vet student. She won't even talk to me now," he said, pushing his untouched coffee away. "Says what we did goes against everything she's studying for." The others shared similar stories of mounting pressure from family, friends, and even strangers who had identified them from the viral video. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Tyler Brooks's father, a stern-faced man in an expensive suit who had clearly left important meetings to deal with this crisis. "Do you boys have any idea what you've done?" he demanded, his voice low but intense. "That ranch you attacked? Valor Ridge isn't just some hobby farm. It's a recognized rehabilitation center for veterans and rescued horses." The young men shifted uncomfortably as Mr. Brooks continued, pulling up a chair. "The owner, James Harrison, he's not just some rancher. He's a decorated Navy SEAL who's saved more lives than you can count. And that horse you kicked—" He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "That horse helps veterans deal with PTSD. Your little stunt hasn't just gone viral. It's become a symbol of everything wrong with privileged youth." Kane's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from his father. Martin Thompson's text was brief but devastating. "Meeting at Valor Ridge Ranch, tomorrow morning, non-negotiable." Similar messages appeared on the others' phones, their parents having apparently coordinated their response to this crisis. Chris Walker, whose mother served on several charitable foundation boards, looked particularly shaken. "My mum's crying," he said quietly. "Says she's never been so ashamed. The foundations she works with, they all support veteran causes. This could cost her everything she's worked for." Devon Mills, the youngest of the group and usually the first to follow Kane's lead, finally spoke up. "Maybe we should just apologize. Make a public statement or something?" The suggestion hung in the air, met with uncertain glances. Their usual strategy of throwing money at problems suddenly seemed inadequate. Mr. Brooks shook his head, his expression grim. "It's way past that now, boys. The veteran community is tight-knit, and you've managed to offend all of them. Plus, the timing couldn't be worse, right before the annual Veteran Support Gala, where most of your parents have been major donors." Outside the coffee shop, life continued as normal, but for these 6 young men, everything had shifted. The protective bubble of privilege that had always shielded them from consequences was beginning to crack. Their phones continued to buzz with notifications, each one a reminder that their actions had rippled far beyond their insulated world. Kane stared into his cold coffee, remembering the sound of their boots connecting with Thunder's side, the horse's startled reaction, the laughter that now made him feel sick to his stomach. "What do you think they'll do to us?" he asked, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. "Whatever it is," Mr. Brooks replied, standing to leave, "you'll take it without complaint. You boys want to act tough? Tomorrow you'll meet people who know what real toughness is. And it has nothing to do with hurting those weaker than you." He paused, looking each of them in the eye. "Be at the ranch by 8. And boys, leave your phones at home. It's time you learned about real consequences." As Mr. Brooks left, the group sat in stunned silence. Through the coffee shop window, they could see their reflection, 6 young men who had never faced real adversity, about to confront the repercussions of their actions. The thought of meeting Hawk Harrison, the veteran whose sanctuary they had violated, filled them with a dread none of them had experienced before. "What do you think a Navy SEAL considers appropriate punishment?" Devon asked, his voice barely a whisper. Nobody answered, but their imaginations painted vivid pictures of military-style discipline. The approaching meeting at Valor Ridge loomed over them like an approaching storm, promising to shatter their comfortable worldview forever. Dawn broke over Valor Ridge Ranch with a somber intensity. The morning mist clung to the grass like nature's own camouflage, reminiscent of the countless missions Hawk had undertaken in his SEAL days. He stood at the main gate, Sarah at his side, watching the approach of several luxury vehicles making their way up the gravel road. The time had come to transform arrogance into understanding. Thunder grazed nearby, his presence a reminder of why they were all here. The bruising on his side had begun to fade, but the incident had left its mark on more than just his flesh. Other horses from the sanctuary gathered around him protectively, as if sensing the importance of the morning's events. Dr. Rodriguez had arrived early to monitor Thunder's behavior during what promised to be a tense encounter. The vehicles pulled, up in a neat row, a stark contrast to the chaotic arrival of days before. One by one, the 6 young men emerged, accompanied by their parents, gone were the designer clothes and cocky attitudes, replaced by subdued expressions and casual wear. Kane Thompson, in particular, seemed to have lost his swagger, staying close to his father's side like a child seeking protection. Martin Thompson stepped forward first, his usual commanding presence somewhat diminished. "Mr. Harrison," he began, but Hawk raised a hand, cutting him off. "Inside the barn," Hawk said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had led men into combat. "All of you." The group followed silently, parents and children alike affected by the gravitas of the moment. As they entered the barn, they were met by an unexpected sight. The walls were lined with photographs, not just of horses, but of veterans. Each image told a story of healing, of battles fought long after the war had ended. Among them were pictures of Thunder working with veterans suffering from PTSD, his gentle presence helping them find peace when nothing else could. Master Sergeant Chen stood at attention near a projection screen, while Lisa Walker prepared her camera to document the meeting. Several other veterans from the local community were present, creating an informal tribunal that carried more weight than any courtroom. Sarah had positioned herself near Thunder's stall, her medic's bag at her feet, a subtle reminder of the harm that had been inflicted. "Before we begin," Hawk announced, his voice echoing in the barn's hushed atmosphere, "I want you to understand where you are." He gestured to the photographs. "Every horse in this sanctuary has a story of trauma and recovery. Every veteran who comes here carries wounds you can't see. This isn't just a ranch, it's a place of healing." The young men shifted uncomfortably as Hawk approached them. "You thought it would be funny to kick a horse for social media fame. Let me tell you about that horse." He nodded to Sarah, who started a video presentation. Footage played showing Thunder's rescue, a skeletal, terrified creature barely clinging to life. "Thunder was found abandoned in a remote area, left to die," Hawk continued. "Like many of us who served, he carried deep wounds. Through patience and trust, he became not just a survivor, but a healer. The veterans who work with him find strength in his resilience. Your actions didn't just hurt an animal, they violated a sacred space of recovery." Kane's father attempted to reach for his wallet, but Hawk's sharp glance stopped him. "This isn't about money, Mr. Thompson. You can't write a check to fix this." "Every horse here has a story," she explained, gesturing to the surrounding stalls. "Many of them came to us broken, just like some of our veterans. The healing process isn't just physical. It's about rebuilding trust and understanding trauma." The morning's work had barely begun, but already the young men were showing signs of transformation. Their designer clothes were filthy, their carefully maintained appearances disheveled. More importantly, their attitudes had begun to shift. The physical labor left no room for arrogance or pretense. "You know what's ironic?" Sarah commented to Hawk, as they watched Kane struggle with a particularly heavy load. "These boys wanted to prove their strength by hurting a horse. Now they're learning what real strength looks like, the kind that builds up instead of tears down." As noon approached, the group gathered near Thunder's paddock for their next lesson. The Mustangs stood at a distance, regarding them with cautious interest. Hawk stepped forward, his presence commanding their attention despite their exhaustion. "What you did to Thunder was a choice," he began, his voice carrying across the quiet yard. "Every day we make choices about how to use our strength. You chose to use yours for cruelty. Now you're going to learn how to use it for healing instead." He gestured to the work they'd completed. "This morning was just the beginning. By the time you're done here, you'll understand what true power really means." The young men exchanged glances, their earlier bravado replaced by something approaching humility. The morning's labor had given them a small taste of what lay ahead. 6 weeks of hard work, valuable lessons, and though they didn't know it yet, profound transformation. As the weeks progressed at Valor Ridge Ranch, the transformation in Kane and his friends became increasingly evident. Their third weekend began much like the others, with aching muscles and dirty boots, but something had started to shift in their attitudes. The physical labor, which had once seemed like punishment, was beginning to feel more like a meditation. Even Kane's trademark platinum hair had grown out, revealing its natural dark roots, as if reflecting the stripping away of his artificial persona. Sarah watched from the fence as Kane and Marcus worked with a new rescue horse, their movements more confident now, but tempered with respect. "Notice how they're actually listening to the horse's body language," she remarked to Hawk, who stood beside her. 3 weeks ago, they wouldn't have even noticed those subtle signs of anxiety. The morning sun cast long shadows across the paddock where Jason and Tyler were conducting their assigned tasks. Under the guidance of Master Sergeant Chen, they were learning the intricate process of gaining a nervous horse's trust. The animal, a recently rescued mare named Hope, had arrived at the sanctuary showing signs of severe abuse. "Slow movements," Master Sergeant Chen instructed, his voice carrying the same measured tone he'd used with young soldiers. "Let her come to you. Trust isn't demanded, it's earned." The boys nodded, their previous cockiness replaced by focused attention. They'd learned the hard way that rushing things with horses only led to setbacks. Meanwhile, Chris and Devon were working with Dr. Rodriguez, learning about equine first aid. The veterinarian had been skeptical about teaching these young men at first, but their genuine interest in helping the horses had won her over. "The antibiotic goes here," she demonstrated, showing them how to treat a minor wound on one of the older horses. "Remember, gentle but firm, just like everything else here." Thunder, who had become something of a measuring stick for their progress, grazed nearby. The Mustang's presence still filled the young men with shame when they remembered their cruel act, but now that shame was tinged with something else, a desire to make amends. They'd learned about his history in detail during their educational sessions, understanding how his own journey from trauma to healing mirrored those of many veterans who found solace at the ranch. "You know what's remarkable?" Sarah commented to Hawk as they observed the group's progress. "They're not just learning about horses, they're learning about themselves." She nodded toward Kane, who was patiently working with a particularly skittish colt. "That boy who kicked Thunder out. Of arrogance? He spent 2 hours yesterday just sitting in the paddock, letting that nervous colt get used to his presence." The afternoon brought a new challenge as a group of veterans arrived for their regular therapy session. In previous weeks, the young men had been kept separate from these sessions out of respect for the veterans' privacy. But today, Hawk had decided they were ready to witness the true purpose of Valor Ridge. "Watch and learn," Hawk instructed the group as they gathered at a respectful distance. A veteran named Mike, who struggled with severe PTSD, was working with Thunder in the main arena. The Mustang moved with gentle awareness, responding to the veteran's anxiety with calm reassurance. The connection between them was almost tangible. Kane and his friends watched in silence as Mike gradually relaxed, his tense shoulders dropping as he brushed Thunder's coat. The horse's steady presence seemed to anchor him in the present moment, drawing him away from whatever haunting memories had followed him to the ranch. "This is why we do what we do," Sarah explained quietly to the group. Every horse you help heal becomes part of someone else's healing journey. That's the ripple effect of kindness and cruelty. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The young men exchanged glances, the full impact of their earlier actions finally sinking in. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent, the group gathered for their daily reflection session. These meetings had become an integral part of their rehabilitation program, a time to process what they'd learned and witnessed. 3 weeks ago, Hawk began, you thought strength was about dominance, about proving your power over something you saw as weaker. He gestured to the paddocks where the horses grazed peacefully. Now, you're learning that real strength is about patience, understanding, and the courage to face your own mistakes. The young men nodded, their expressions thoughtful. The day's experiences had left them quieter than usual, particularly after witnessing the therapeutic sessions. Cain, who had once led them in acts of cruelty, now seemed to be leading them toward redemption, asking questions about horse behavior and veteran support programs with genuine interest. You're halfway through your time here, Sarah reminded them as the meeting concluded, but in many ways this is just the beginning. She looked at each of them in turn, seeing not the arrogant boys who had arrived at the ranch, but young men on the cusp of meaningful change. The real test isn't what you do here under supervision, it's what you choose to do with these lessons once your time here is done. As the weeks progressed at Valor Ridge Ranch, the transformation in Cain and his friends became increasingly evident. Their third weekend began much like the others, with aching muscles and dirty boots, but something had started to shift in their attitudes. The physical labor, which had once seemed like punishment, was beginning to feel more like a meditation. Even Cain's trademark platinum hair had grown out, revealing its natural dark roots, as if reflecting the stripping away of his artificial persona. Sarah watched from the fence as Cain and Marcus worked with a new rescue horse, their movements more confident now, but tempered with respect. Notice how they're actually listening to the horse's body language, she remarked to Hawk, who stood beside her. 3 weeks ago, they wouldn't have even noticed those subtle signs of anxiety. The morning sun cast long shadows across the paddock where Jason and Tyler were conducting their assigned tasks. Under the guidance of Master Sergeant Chen, they were learning the intricate process of gaining a nervous horse's trust. The animal, a recently rescued mare named Hope, had arrived at the sanctuary showing signs of severe abuse. Slow movements, Master Sergeant Chen instructed, his voice carrying the same measured tone he'd used with young soldiers. Let her come to you. Trust isn't demanded, it's earned. The boys nodded, their previous cockiness replaced by focused attention. They'd learned the hard way that rushing things with horses only led to setbacks. Meanwhile, Chris and Devon were working with Dr. Rodriguez, learning about equine first aid. The veterinarian had been skeptical about teaching these young men at first, but their genuine interest in helping the horses had won her over. The antibiotic goes here, she demonstrated, showing them how to treat a minor wound on one of the older horses. Remember, gentle but firm, just like everything else here. Thunder, who had become something of a measuring stick for their progress, grazed nearby. The Mustang's presence still filled the young men with shame when they remembered their cruel act, but now that shame was tinged with something else, a desire to make amends. They'd learned about his history in detail during their educational sessions, understanding how his own journey from trauma to healing mirrored those of many veterans who found solace at the ranch. You know what's remarkable? Sarah commented to Hawk as they observed the group's progress. They're not just learning about horses, they're learning about themselves. She nodded toward Cain, who was patiently working with a particularly skittish colt. That boy who kicked Thunder out of arrogance. He spent 2 hours yesterday just sitting in the paddock, letting that nervous colt get used to his presence. The afternoon brought a new challenge as a group of veterans arrived for their regular therapy session. In previous weeks, the young men had been kept separate from these sessions out of respect for the veterans' privacy. But today, Hawk had decided they were ready to witness the true purpose of Valor Ridge. "Watch and learn," Hawk instructed the group as they gathered at a respectful distance. A veteran named Mike, who struggled with severe PTSD, was working with Thunder in the main arena. The Mustang moved with gentle awareness, responding to the veteran's anxiety with calm reassurance. The connection between them was almost tangible. Kane and his friends watched in silence as Mike gradually relaxed, his tense shoulders dropping as he brushed Thunder's coat. The horse's steady presence seemed to anchor him in the present moment, drawing him away from whatever haunting memories had followed him to the ranch. "This is why we do what we do," Sarah explained quietly to the group. "Every horse you help heal becomes part of someone else's healing journey. That's the ripple effect of kindness and cruelty." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The young men exchanged glances, the full impact of their earlier actions finally sinking in. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent, the group gathered for their daily reflection session. These meetings had become an integral part of their rehabilitation program, a time to process what they'd learned and witnessed. 3 weeks ago, Hawk began, you thought strength was about dominance, about proving your power over something you saw as weaker. He gestured to the paddocks where the horses grazed peacefully. Now, you're learning that real strength is about patience, understanding, and the courage to face your own mistakes. The young men nodded, their expressions thoughtful. The day's experiences had left them quieter than usual, particularly after witnessing the therapeutic sessions. Kane, who had once led them in acts of cruelty, now seemed to be leading them toward redemption, asking questions about horse behavior and veteran support programs with genuine interest. "You're halfway through your time here," Sarah reminded them as the meeting concluded. "But in many ways, this is just the beginning." She looked at each of them in turn, seeing not the arrogant boys who had arrived at the ranch, but young men on the cusp of meaningful change. The real test isn't what you do here under supervision. It's what you choose to do with these lessons once your time here is done. The aftermath of the storm brought unexpected opportunities for Kane and his friends to demonstrate their transformation. The morning after the tempest, they arrived at Valor Ridge Ranch to find the property requiring significant cleanup and repair. Rather than waiting to be assigned tasks, they immediately began assessing damage and organizing themselves into work teams, showing initiative that impressed even the veteran staff. Kane, his natural hair color now fully showing through the faded platinum, was checking on Thunder when he noticed something remarkable. The Mustang, who had once recoiled from his presence, now approached him willingly, even lowering his head, to allow Kane to check for any storm-related injuries. The moment wasn't lost on Hawk, who watched from the barn doorway as the young man who had once acted with such cruelty now showed genuine concern for the horse's well-being. "It's amazing. How much can change in 5 weeks?" Sarah commented, joining Hawk's observation. They watched as Marcus and Jason efficiently coordinated the cleanup of fallen branches, while Tyler and Chris worked on documenting damage for insurance purposes, using skills from their business-oriented backgrounds for constructive purposes. Devon, the youngest, was assisting Dr. Rodriguez with post-storm health checks on the more anxious horses. The morning's work was interrupted by unexpected visitors. A local news crew, having heard about how the ranch had weathered the storm, arrived to do a story on emergency preparedness for equine facilities. Lisa Walker, who had been following the young men's rehabilitation journey, saw an opportunity for something more meaningful than just weather coverage. "Would you be willing to share your experience?" she asked Kane and his friends after consulting with Hawk. Not just about the storm, but about your journey here. It could help other young people understand the importance of respect and responsibility. The old Kane would have jumped at any chance for publicity, but this new version hesitated, looking to Hawk for guidance. "Your choice," Hawk said simply. "But remember, every story has the power to teach something valuable." The young men huddled together, their discussion thoughtful and measured, a far cry from their previous impulsive decision-making. After several minutes, they agreed to participate, but with conditions that surprised everyone. "We'll do it," Kane stated, "but only if we can include the veteran stories too. This isn't just about us learning our lesson. It's about understanding why places like Valor Ridge are so important." The others nodded in agreement, and Sarah noticed tears in the eyes of several veterans who overheard the exchange. The interview took place in the main paddock, with Thunder and other horses providing a powerful backdrop. Each young man spoke, with remarkable candor, about their journey from arrogance to understanding. They didn't minimize their initial crime or make excuses for their behavior. Instead, they focused on what they'd learned about strength, responsibility, and the deep connection between horses and healing. "We came here thinking we were tough," Kane explained to the camera, his voice steady but humble. "But the veterans and horses taught us what real toughness is. It's not about causing pain or showing dominance. It's about having the strength to heal and help others heal." As he spoke, Thunder approached and gently nudged his shoulder, a gesture that spoke volumes about their transformed relationship. Master Sergeant Chen shared his perspective on their evolution. When they first arrived, these young men couldn't tell the difference between power and strength. Now they understand that true strength lies in how you use your power to help others. The camera captured moments of the young men working with the horses, their movements now confident but gentle, showing the profound change in their approach. Dr. Rodriguez contributed her professional observations. "The physical transformation is remarkable, but the emotional growth is even more significant. They've developed empathy, patience, and a genuine understanding of trauma and healing." She described how they had progressed from reluctant participants to active contributors in the ranch's therapeutic programs. The story began to take shape as something far more significant than a simple tale of punishment and redemption. It became a testament to the transformative power of understanding, respect, and purpose. The young men spoke about their plans to continue volunteering at the ranch, even after their mandated period ended, and about how the experience had changed their life perspectives. Sarah shared stories of their progress, including their response to the previous day's storm. They showed up early, knew exactly what needed to be done, and worked tirelessly to protect the horses. That kind of change doesn't come from fear of punishment. It comes from genuine personal growth. As the interview concluded, Lisa asked them one final question. "What would you say to your former selves, or to others who might be tempted to act as you did?" The young men exchanged glances before Kane answered, his words carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "I would tell them that real strength isn't found in causing pain or getting likes on social media," he said absently, stroking Thunder's neck. "It's found in the courage to face your mistakes, the humility to learn from them, and the commitment to make things right. These horses and veterans, they've taught us that true power lies in healing, not hurting." The news crew packed up their equipment as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the ranch. The story would air the following week, but the real story, the daily work of transformation and healing, would continue long after the cameras stopped rolling. Thunder stood watchful in the golden light, a living symbol of the journey. From trauma to trust, while around him former adversaries worked together in the peaceful harmony of shared purpose and understanding. The impact of the televised story reverberated far beyond Valor Ridge Ranch. Within days of airing, the segment went viral, touching hearts and challenging perspectives across the country. The young men's honest account of their transformation, combined with the powerful imagery of their work with thunder and the veterans, sparked a nationwide conversation about responsibility, redemption, and the healing power of human-animal connections. As the final week of their mandated program began, Kane and his friends arrived at the ranch to find an unexpected scene. The parking area was filled with vehicles, and a crowd had gathered near the main barn. Parents of troubled teens, veterans, organizations, and representatives from other equine therapy programs had come to witness firsthand the program that had transformed 6 privileged young men into compassionate, responsible individuals. Hawk gathered the group in the main arena, Thunder standing proudly beside him. The Mustang's presence now elicited respect rather than fear from visitors, his story of resilience and forgiveness touching everyone who heard it. What began as a consequence has become something much larger. Hawk addressed the crowd, his voice carrying the weight of experience. These young men's journey has shown us that change is possible when we combine accountability with understanding. Kane stepped forward, his demeanor worlds apart from the arrogant youth who had first arrived at Valor Ridge. 6 weeks ago we thought this was punishment, he began, his voice steady and sincere. We were wrong. This wasn't about punishment, it was about transformation. Every veteran who shared their story, every horse we worked with taught us something about strength, healing, and what it truly means to be powerful. Sarah had organized a demonstration of their work with the horses, showcasing how far they had come. The young men moved through their tasks with practiced ease, their interactions with the animals displaying a level of sensitivity and awareness that moved many observers to tears. Thunder, in particular, worked seamlessly with Kane, their previous. Conflict transformed into a partnership that demonstrated the possibility of healing even the deepest wounds. Master Sergeant Chen shared his observations with the gathered crowd. When these boys first arrived, they couldn't tell the difference between domination and leadership. Now look at them. They understand that true leadership isn't about control. It's about trust, respect, and mutual understanding. The veterans' words carried special weight as visitors watched the young men guide nervous horses through complex exercises with gentle, assured confidence. Dr. Rodriguez presented data on the therapeutic impact of their work, noting how their presence had actually enhanced the ranch's healing programs. Their transformation has become part of our success story, she explained. Veterans in our programs see these young men who chose to change, and it reinforces their own journey of healing. It's created a powerful ripple effect we never anticipated. The young men's parents, watching from the sidelines, could barely reconcile these mature, thoughtful individuals with the boys who had filmed themselves kicking a horse for social media attention. Martin Thompson, Kane's father, approached Hawk during a break in the demonstrations. I thought writing a check would fix this, he admitted. I've never been happier to be proven wrong. As the afternoon progressed, the young men led small group tours of the ranch, explaining the various therapy programs and sharing their experiences. They spoke with remarkable insight about the parallel journeys of horses and veterans, demonstrating an understanding of trauma and healing that belied their years. Their stories resonated particularly strongly with parents of troubled teens, who saw in their transformation a hope for their own children. The most important lesson we learned, Marcus explained to one group, is that strength isn't about proving yourself superior to others. It's about having the courage to face your mistakes and the dedication to make things right." The others nodded in agreement, each adding their own perspectives on how the experience had changed their worldview. Looking forward, the young men had already made commitments to continue their involvement with Valor Ridge. Jason and Tyler were developing a business plan to help the ranch expand its programs, while Chris and Devon had started training to become regular volunteers. Kane, whose leadership had once led his friends into trouble, was now leading them toward a future of service and purpose. Thunder's role in their transformation remained central to their story. The Mustang had become a living symbol of resilience and forgiveness, his willingness to trust again after betrayal, teaching powerful lessons about healing and second chances. As the day drew to a close, Kane stood with the horse in the golden light of sunset, their silhouettes merging into a powerful image of reconciliation. Hawk gathered everyone for a final observation. "What you've witnessed today isn't just about 6 young men learning their lesson," he said, his voice carrying across the attentive crowd. "It's about the transformative power of purpose, accountability, and connection. These horses, these veterans, they've taught us all that healing is possible, that change is real, and that every act of genuine redemption creates ripples of hope that extend far beyond our expectations." The gathered crowd dispersed slowly, many lingering to talk with the young men or thank the veterans for their service. The sun set over Valor Ridge Ranch, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold, while Thunder grazed peacefully nearby, his presence a testament to the enduring power of forgiveness and the possibility of transformation. The final days of the official program brought a series of powerful moments that cemented the transformation of Kane and his friends. The ranch buzzed with activity as they prepared for their formal graduation ceremony, though everyone understood that their connection to Valor Ridge would continue long after the mandated period ended. The morning began with their usual tasks, but there was a different energy in the air, a sense of accomplishment mixed with responsibility for the future. Sarah had organized a special demonstration for the graduation ceremony, showcasing not just what the young men had learned about working with horses, but how they had incorporated these lessons into their broader understanding of life. Each of them would work with a different horse, demonstrating the various aspects of the ranch's therapeutic programs, with Kane and Thunder serving as the finale. As family members and community leaders began arriving, Master Sergeant Chen gathered the group for a private moment in the barn. "Remember when you first arrived?" he asked, his stern expression softening with pride. "You couldn't tell a lead rope from a lunge line. Now look at you, teaching others about respect, responsibility, and rehabilitation." The young men nodded, remembering their initial arrogance and ignorance with a mixture of shame and gratitude for how far they'd come. Dr. Rodriguez joined them, carrying a thick folder of documentation. "I've been tracking your progress scientifically," she explained, "and the results are remarkable. Your work here has actually enhanced our therapy programs. The veterans respond differently when they see young people demonstrating such profound change." She shared graphs and data showing the positive impact their presence had on the ranch's therapeutic outcomes. The ceremony began with Hawk addressing the gathered crowd from the center of the main arena. Thunder stood nearby, his presence a powerful reminder of where this journey had begun. 6 weeks ago, Hawk started, his voice carrying across the hushed audience. "These young men committed an act of cruelty that shocked our community. Today, They stand before you as examples of what's possible when we choose transformation over punishment, understanding over vengeance. One by one, the young men demonstrated their skills. Jason worked with a recently rescued horse, showing how to gain the trust of a traumatized animal. Tyler demonstrated the techniques they used during the storm to calm nervous horses. Marcus and Chris worked together to showcase the ranch's rehabilitation exercises, while Devon explained the therapeutic benefits to the audience. Between demonstrations, veterans who had worked with them over the past weeks shared their observations. Mike, the veteran who had struggled with PTSD, spoke about how witnessing their transformation had aided his own healing journey. Watching these young men change reminded me that no one is defined by their worst moments, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Their willingness to learn and grow gave me hope for my own recovery. The most powerful moment came when Kane entered the arena with thunder. The audience knew their history, the cruel kick that had started this journey, making their current partnership all the more meaningful. Together, they demonstrated the most advanced trust exercises, moving in perfect harmony. Thunder responded to Kane's subtle cues with grace and confidence. Their previous conflict transformed into a beautiful display of mutual respect and understanding. Sarah noticed tears in the eyes of Kane's father as he watched his son working with the horse he had once hurt. The transformation wasn't just in the young men's actions, it was evident in their entire way of being. Their designer clothes had been replaced by practical workwear. Their carefully styled appearances given way to the authentic look of people who had discovered the satisfaction of meaningful work. As the demonstrations concluded, each young man spoke about their journey. They didn't minimize their initial crime or make excuses. Instead, they focused on what they'd learned about strength, responsibility, and the deep connection between horses and healing. Their words carried the weight of genuine experience and hard-won wisdom. "We came here thinking we knew what strength was," Kane concluded, standing beside Thunder. "We thought it was about power over others, about proving ourselves through a dominance. These horses, these veterans, they taught us that real strength lies in how you use your power to help others heal and grow." Thunder gently nudged his shoulder, drawing soft laughs from the crowd at this display of affection between former adversaries. The ceremony concluded with an unexpected announcement. The young men had worked together to create a foundation, backed by their families' resources, dedicated to expanding Valor Ridge's programs. The foundation would focus on bringing similar rehabilitation opportunities to troubled youth across the country, using their story as a model for transformation. "This isn't an ending," Hawk declared as the ceremony drew to a close. "It's a beginning. These young men aren't just graduating from a program. They're stepping into a new chapter of life, one where they'll use their privileges and resources to help others find the same transformation they experienced." As the sun began to set on Valor Ridge Ranch, casting long shadows across the arena, Thunder stood among the group for photographs. The Mustang's presence was a living testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of change. In his eyes, and in the eyes of the young men who had learned so much from him, shone the promise of continued growth and healing. 1 year after their transformative experience at Valor Ridge Ranch, the impact of Kane and his friend's journey continued to ripple outward in unexpected ways. The ranch had become a beacon of hope, drawing visitors from across the country who sought to understand how 6 privileged young men had transformed from perpetrators of cruelty to champions of healing and responsibility. The morning sun cast familiar shadows across the paddocks as Kane arrived for his regular volunteer shift. He no longer drove the flashy sports car of his past. Instead, a practical truck carried the equipment he needed for his work with the horses. His natural dark hair and weathered boots reflected the authentic person he had become, someone who measured success not by social media likes, but by the trust in a nervous horse's eyes. Thunder greeted him with a gentle nickering, the Mustang's powerful presence now a source of comfort rather than intimidation. Their story had become legend at the ranch, how an act of cruelty had led to one of the most profound partnerships in the sanctuary's history. Together, they worked with new veterans entering the program, their own journey of reconciliation serving as a living example of healing and transformation. The foundation established by Cain and his friends had exceeded all expectations. In its first year, it had helped fund the expansion of Valor Ridge's programs and supported the creation of similar initiatives at 3 other locations across the country. Jason and Tyler, applying their business acumen to a worthy cause, had developed a sustainable model for combining therapeutic riding programs with youth rehabilitation. Sarah watched from the office window as Marcus and Chris led a group of troubled teens through their first day of orientation. "Remember how scared those horses were of you?" Marcus asked the group, sharing his own story with unflinching honesty. "That fear came from our actions, but what you're about to learn is that trust can be rebuilt, and that change is always possible if you're willing to do the work." The ranch itself had evolved, with new facilities funded by the foundation. Devon, the youngest of the original group, had shown a particular talent for working with the most traumatized horses, his gentle patience helping them overcome their fear of humans. Dr. Rodriguez had documented his techniques, incorporating them into the ranch's expanding therapeutic programs. Master Sergeant Chen, still an integral part of the ranch's operations, often remarked on the symmetry of healing he witnessed. The horses heal the veterans help heal troubled youth, and everyone involved finds something they didn't know they were missing, he would say, watching the daily interactions between humans and horses with quiet satisfaction. The media attention had gradually shifted from the sensational aspects of their initial story to the deeper implications of their transformation. Researchers from several universities had begun studying the Valor Ridge model, documenting how the combination of accountability, purpose, and connection could create lasting change in young lives. Thunder's role had expanded beyond his work with Cain. The Mustang had become a symbol of resilience and forgiveness, his story inspiring others to believe in the possibility of change. New visitors to the ranch would hear about the horse who had turned an act of cruelty into an opportunity for transformation, teaching privileged young men the true meaning of strength and responsibility. Hawk stood at his usual spot by the northern fence, observing the morning activities with quiet pride. The ranch had always been a place of healing, but the events of the past year had added new dimensions to its purpose. "Sometimes," he mused to Sarah, "the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes if we're willing to learn from them." The afternoon brought a special ceremony as the foundation launched its latest initiative, a scholarship program for at-risk youth to participate in equine therapy programs. Cain and his friends had pledged not only their resources, but their time, committing to mentor each scholarship recipient personally. "A year ago we thought we were tough," Cain addressed the gathered crowd, Thunder standing steadfast beside him. "We confused cruelty with strength, dominance with power. These horses, these veterans, they taught us what real toughness looks like. It's about having the courage to face your mistakes, the strength to make things right, and the commitment to help others find their way." As the sun began to set on another day at Valor Ridge Ranch, the evening light painted the scene in hues of gold and promise. Veterans worked with their equine partners. Troubled youth learned lessons about trust and responsibility, and horses that had once known only fear discovered the joy of connection. In the main paddock, Thunder grazed peacefully, his presence a living testament to the transformative power of forgiveness and understanding. The story of 6 young men and their journey from cruelty to compassion had become more than just a tale of redemption. It had evolved into a blueprint for change, a testament to the possibility of transformation, and a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures. As night fell over Valor Ridge Ranch, the stars emerged one by one, their light reflecting the countless lives touched by a journey that began with a single act of cruelty, but bloomed into an endless cascade of healing and hope. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.